Hello, welcome to another live. It's Wednesday, 8 p.m. Australia, 11 a.m. the UK, and between 3 and 6 a.m. in the United States. Today I've got the Mind Tradie on with me, but before he comes on, I just wanted to remind you about the podcast that went out on Sunday. It was Dave from Big Brother Australia 2022, and we've just had the final of it here. But it was a really great interview, so I want you to go and have a listen to that one. And I also wanted to let you know that the Mind Tradie who's coming on is brilliant. There's a podcast coming up with him in the next few weeks, and you're going to love his story. He's here. I'm going to let him in if I remember how to do this. I don't want to let the wrong person in. He's on his way. Hello, Charlotte Anna as well. G'day, Jamie.
Hello, mate. How are you?
Good. This is the
Good.
Mind Tradie, everybody. I've met Jamie once to do a podcast with a couple of weeks ago. And also we've been chatting quite a bit on Instagram as we do.
Yeah. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. And now I've forgotten what the topic was that we were going to talk about. But first of all, do you want to introduce yourself so that people know a little bit about you?
Look, I'm the Mind Tradie, as Dan said before. So, look, I do counselling and coaching with people, but and I study psychology as well. And I'm about 80% of my way through the studies there, so I've got a bit of a way to go. But what do? I just try to, give people the belief, the motivation, the strategies, or whatever, to get the most out of themselves. Improve in areas in life that they want to improve in. And I guess one of my passion areas is those people, working with those people that have had, some maybe troubles in childhood or that kind of stuff. But I could work with anyone.
And look, your story is incredible. And if you like the Mind Tradie today, Jamie, then I urge you to go and listen to his podcast, because that's how I actually got to know him. We chatted a little bit, and then I went and listened to some of his podcasts, and I absolutely love them. It's one of my favorite podcasts. And there's a couple in there. Well, there's a story in there which we actually talked about for my podcast, because Jamie's had an incredible life. And when you hear what's happened to him when he was younger, and then what's happened to him recently in the last, I think it's about the last 10 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
Inspiration overwhelming from this man. And I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. I'm, listening to your story is just incredible. And that's why I wanted you to come on the podcast. And then that's why I said to you, let's do a live, because I really want people to get to know you and listen to your podcast and, start supporting you, because you do some great stuff. And unlike me, who still has to go back and finish my counselling degree, you're powering through, and all good to you. Look, we just have to say hello to a few people that have come in. So we've got Rob in America, and we've got Charlotte Anna White, who's here in Australia. We've got Chad Nelson from Virginia. We've got Blixer Girl, who's here in Australia. Sarah Gleason, I'm not sure where I know. Have you been in before? And we've got Redette. Redette usually pops in and stays and has a listen. God, we've got loads of people coming in.
Hello, everyone. Good. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. So I'll keep you up to date with what's going on in comments and questions. And not questions, is it? It's comments. Yeah, comments and questions. Yeah. So if you want to ask any comments or questions as we're going through, please feel free to. And as long as the feed doesn't go too quickly, I'll be able to read them out, and we'll get back to them and have a chat about them. So today I think we were talking about positive and negative impacts on our lives as children.
Like child.
Through the rest of our lives.
Good topic.
I'm actually going to say one about what happened to me when I was younger, but do you want to start first so that people can hear what happened to you when you were younger?
Man, you actually haven't told me one of yours, so I'd like to hear yours first.
I'll go with mine. So look, in school in England, I was a very nervous child. I liked school. In England, we have, here you have primary school and high school. Over there, we had infant school, then middle school, and then secondary school. And so in infant school, I loved it, had a great time. When we went up to middle school, I loved my first teacher. My second teacher's name was Mrs. Trotter, and she was an absolute cow. She hated, well, I presume she hated the boys because she always told us we'd never amount to anything, we'd never do anything, we were stupid. She made a couple of the guys in the class wet themselves and then sent them home early. Look, and a friend of mine who I've just caught up with recently, who I used to go to school with in England, he said that he had really bad anxiety until he was about 30 because of the way she treated him. I had this mental block in my head, and when I started doing the counselling diploma back in 2012, I just couldn't learn. And I had a mentor helping me, and she said, look, something's happened in your childhood, and that's why you just feel like you can't learn. And we worked through it, and we worked out that it was this teacher. And so I had to believe in myself again that it was okay, and I did know what I was doing, and I could learn. And that was a terrible block for me because I had that all my life, you know, up until I was 40. I just thought, I can't do anything. I can't learn because I'm stupid. Another guy in the class, he actually went into the class when he was in his 20s and confronted the teacher and said, look, because you always called me podgy, I actually became not anorexic. What's the other one? Bulimic.
Bulimic, yeah.
Yeah. And we just can't imagine how many kids this woman destroyed by being how she was. And actually my sister, she was in her year a couple of years before me, and she had a hard time too. Look, I mean, I don't know, when we came here, teachers here were a lot nicer, but in England, they seem to be quite cruel and sadistic. There was another one called Mrs. Wickham who just screamed and shouted at all the kids. So school for me in England wasn't great. And I took a lot of time off school because I always had bad stomachs. And what happened was I had, what's it called? It's called peritonitis, which is to do with your appendix, which was inflamed. And when I told my parents, oh, I feel really sick, I can't go to school, they still sent me to school because they thought I just didn't want to go because I was scared. And actually, when I got home in the evening, they had to rush me off to hospital, and I had to have my appendix out because, So that's one of my stories about childhood and what affected me up until I was 40. And I never realized it affected me that much until I started doing counseling and learning about myself. And then it was like, wow, I've held on to that all those years. And it's just stopped me from learning.
Yeah. I guess, like your story, and then I guess stories that I can share. I guess to give a bit of context of why I feel anybody's story is important like that, from whether it's maybe childhood ones that we've probably paid less attention to because it just becomes part of our thinking. We just accept it as being normal. Why I think it's important is because, particularly, like I'm 38, but I really started to get onto this, like really started thinking about this stuff when I was like 30, 32, 35 kind of thing, is like obviously the things that happen to us early on, what impact us, but our belief systems about the world, ourselves, and other people are formed very early on in those times. And on average, it's around those belief systems about those things. On average, is about up until the age of around 7. A bit later, a bit early for different people, and different situations as well. But so the kind of experiences that we've had with family or with people in schools, or family, friends, whoever, any person that might have been in our life or has caused some kind of significant event, or like a lot of small little things in our lives. Like, if that wasn't so positive, well, how we think about the world, and particularly ourselves, can be like significantly impacted for the negative. And why I think it's so important, and I'm sure you'd agree, it's like, because like what we believe that we deserve and how much we think we can actually achieve, like that is everything. If what do we think we deserve and achieve is like down here because of the way we were treated or the way we were spoken to and all that, I'm like, people really need to question everything. Like even at a later age, like 20, 30, 40, 50, like if you want to make improvements in your life, it's good to go back and go, oh, why might I think that I don't deserve certain things, or why might I think that I don't think that much about myself? Like, are people even aware of this kind of stuff? They might not even be aware. I just think it's so important for everyone to question everything at some point, because it doesn't necessarily mean you don't have to have gone through it. I just want to, I guess, put this as a preface. You don't have to have gone through negative, like traumatic experiences. People, I was this is brought to my attention recently that you might have been brought up in a home where maybe you just didn't get attention. You didn't get positive attention. You didn't get negative attention. You just didn't get any attention, and
Nothing
that
at
could
all.
also, yeah, and that could also be leading to. It could also lead to you thinking not a whole great deal of yourself. Like, why would anyone want to give me attention? You know, that kind of thing later on. And I think
Look,
it's so.
Jamie, that was a really good point because, yeah, we think about people getting positive or negative attention, but not
Mm,
getting any attention at all. You don't actually know where you stand. You don't know if you're doing good things, bad things.
yeah,
You don't
yeah.
know if you're loved or unloved. I mean, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I think it's important for I mean, like if you're feeling you're having any um, troubles in your life, and I guess I always go back to, is there a large discrepancy between your ideal self and your actual self? Is there like what you're wanting or who you are, but who you want to be or what you're actually wanting to get? Is there a big discrepancy? And I think that belief system and how we think about ourselves in the world and all that kind of stuff, what we deserve and what we can achieve, all that kind of stuff, that can help close that gap if we start raising up those beliefs, a great belief. And so, the things that happened to us earlier on, a lot of the time, not everything, but a lot of, don't get me wrong, there's also stuff that happened to us in our teenage years and adult life that could also affect us as well. But I think these earlier years ones are really the ones that we probably don't pay as much attention to. But yeah, we can really start closing that gap between ideal and actual self when we start having a good look and evaluating and I guess almost reprogramming our belief system.
And it's also learning that that's something you can do because a lot
Mm,
of people just go, oh my God, this is how I am. There's
yeah,
nothing I can do. And I
yeah.
think that's what's important with these sort of things in the podcast is because
Mm,
people can listen to them and learn new things and learn that they can change. I had someone on here a couple of weeks ago who, after I'd done the live, said to me, I've been with a psychologist for the last 2 years, and I've actually learned more by listening to your lives than I've actually learned from the psychologist because it just feels as though I go in there and I talk. And she says,
yeah,
okay, I'll see you next week. And I don't get any feedback. I've just got to
yeah,
mention a couple of comments we've had. So Redette says in primary school, her teacher smacked them. So we all brought our mums up to the school, and she had one teacher who would pick his nose and flick it at the children.
oh,
Rob says, my hair looks great. That's good. And PS Trexus00 must know you, Jamie, because it
yeah, it
says,
does.
Jamie was one of my people during my high school time that I could trust and always look up to. Wow, good on you, Jamie. Danetti says, totally,
Thanks,
what we
buddy.
do as teens makes such an impact. And Danetti says that's worse. I can't remember what she was referring to then. And then Redette said, mad bullying still going on this day and age at schools. So glad no social media when we was at school. Exactly. I mean, I'm so grateful. Look, also
Yeah.
because when I was younger, I
Mm,
like to party and do stuff, and I wouldn't want all that coming back to bite me now. But
yeah.
that's okay. When we're younger, our brains aren't formed properly, so we do a lot of stupid stuff. As we
Yeah.
get older, we realize that, well, that wasn't the best, but I learned from that and I've moved on. I always say to people, look, it doesn't matter what you've done in your life. Even if you've been in prison or something, you can
Yeah.
still turn your life around. It's not
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
that's what you have to wear for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I think people, I'm sure everybody's different, but people can start changing their life around the moment they decide to. That's when
Yeah.
they decide to. That's it. Doesn't like it obviously would get harder as you get older. It would get harder, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
But as soon as people go, you know what, I want to make that change, and they actually commit to that change, change can. I'll put my life I'll put my life in the fact that change can happen in anyone that is willing to do what they need to do.
Perfect. Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. And it can. It seems, I guess it would seem insurmountable to some people that they can change and they can have a better life because
mm,
there are so many things that hold us back, especially as we were saying before, through teenage years, younger years, because, between 7 and 15, they're really important years of development.
mm,
And if we're being told by teachers, parents, people around us, you're no good, or as you say, not giving you any feedback,
yeah,
you start to believe that. And you believe that about yourself. And you start to wonder, why are you
mm,
here? Why am I here if I'm not important to anyone? I mean,
yeah,
kids just need love and attention, and for people to be standing up for them. And look, I think we've changed since, well, I'm 10 years older than you, maybe a little bit older than that, actually 12 years older than you. But in my day, you know, especially school in England was hard. School here was a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I think kids nowadays do get a lot more information around psychology and stuff like that, and ways to calm them and ways to make them feel better. Although I guess, you know, during COVID, we realised that all mental health services ballooned because there wasn't enough services out there to help people.
Yeah, that's very true. I guess in the kinds of things that I'd be, or the examples that I'm talking about, they might go down a slightly different avenue as well, where mine were more concerned with primary caregivers, not so much.
Yep.
Not so much like staff in schools or other people. These are just predominantly primary caregivers. But that also goes back to like particularly what we talked about a lot in, say, schema therapy and that kind of stuff, which I'm not a schema therapist, but I love learning about that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Where they talk about unmet needs of the child. Well, they are generally unmet needs of the child from the primary caregivers. So, like, yeah, in the examples I'll be giving, like they'll be say negative experience or traumatic experience involving primary caregivers, and they can be probably more impactful than, say, people at school. But everybody's different. It just totally depends on the situation, to be honest.
And look, Jamie, you and I studying mental health, psychology, counselling, we also, I think you're the same as me, but we actually analyse everything. So, you know, a child could come from not a very good upbringing, maybe a single mum or something, but then we would look at what's happened to the single mum. Why is this happening to the child? And it could be something bad, like the mum is an alcoholic or on drugs, or it could be something like, you know, she's really struggling to make ends meet and she's got 3 kids and one kid's getting left to the side. So we always have to look at what goes on around in their environment as well, don't we? It's not just cut and dry that, well,
absolutely,
she's treating this child really badly.
And I've got a pretty strong fundamental belief that anybody's gone through some kind of thing, whether it's, you know, what we're talking about in some way, whether it's in the home and in school, or whether they get some kind of diagnosis, whether it's because I work in a high school, so like an ASD diagnosis, like autism spectrum disorder, or ADHD comes up a lot. Like, instantly when that happens, I'm looking for the skill that just this child has, because generally when there's like, same with me, I've got a vision impairment, but it means I see other things, or as in, like, I can pick up on other things, and I'm pretty sure that most of the children I work with that with diagnosis of some sort, or people that have gone through as adults, as children, but are now adults that have gone through some kind of event, have some kind of special thing. Maybe they don't know what it is yet, but there's some kind of thing that they have, some kind of energy or power or some kind of skill that they've learned or whatever it is. It's like that experience has taught them that. So I think I guess, I don't know, I feel fortunate to be able to have that as a thing that I can't necessarily see it all the time, but I look for it and understand it. It's there somewhere. People that have gone through some kind of thing have something. And like, even like some of the things that you've gone through that you described before, I mean, it might have helped you develop the love for doing this kind of stuff as an adult, because you've got an empathy, you've got an understanding. Who knows? Maybe if you didn't go through those things, you might not have been the same way.
Look, and I am a great believer in that. I think even though when you go through things that are really shit in your life and you feel like at the time, oh my God, this is awful. Like, I think I told you, like 3 years ago, I was unemployed for 2 years because of my fibromyalgia and because I couldn't get a job. I kept being told I was overqualified. Now, to me, that was the worst 2 years of my life. No money coming in, living on baked beans, you know, making sure the dog's fed. But then you get through it and you get to a new stage where I am now, where I own a business with a friend, and I do the podcast. And, you know, I look back on that and I go, well, actually, that really made me harden up. That, you know, I've been through a stage where I don't have any money. I've been through a stage where I don't have enough food on the table. And I got through it. So if I can get through that, I can get through pretty much anything now.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got that same belief, yeah.
Well, with the bullying as well at school, well, by the teacher, you know, at the time it was horrific. I think I was about 9 at the time. But now when I look back on it, I think, well, yeah, it did teach me to be more empathetic towards people and to understand people and not to be so judgmental so quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm not a perfect angel, Jamie, but I do my
Hey,
best.
either am I. I'm definitely not. But look, we're on that path to trying to be how we want to be, like that, being good people. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
all we can
and
do.
that's all we can do.
Yeah.
And so what else do you think with children growing up?
Well,
I would say also that the peer pressure at around, say, between 14 and 17, 18, that
yeah,
has a lot of molding on a child, doesn't it?
yeah, definitely it does. I mean, like, I guess, yeah, but up until, well, I mean, realistically, we can make arguments from the age of, say, birth to, say, 18 are just as significant as the other. But I think there's certain things that happen. Like, I think there's, I'll be, if there's people if there's psychologists and that listening, I'm going to make mistakes in the way I'm explaining it, I'm sure. But I think some of the most significant developmental things can happen as I said, between that, or up until our ages around 7. And these are probably things that we're not really aware of. And maybe between, say, up until, say, 7 and 14 or something like that, maybe we're more aware. We've got more, I don't know, we've got more autonomy or something like that. I'm not sure, but I think for some reason it seems to be that the most significant time for developmental, for belief systems and that kind of stuff seems to be in that younger age. So I don't know. There's just something there. I just think maybe because I've had so much experience in my own life, not just because I've like through stuff from my studies, but just my own life. I think if I had continued the rest of my life with the belief system that was developed through what was happening to me up and around that stage, even up until to be honest, even up until the age of, say, 12, 13, 14, like I wouldn't be a happy person. So that's why I think it's so important to evaluate it.
So with what you went through as a child, how did
Mm.
you work your way through that to see who you actually are now?
I was fortunate. Do you think I should maybe I should give context to what I've
Look,
experienced?
I think you should. You don't need to go into
Oh no,
huge depth.
I'm happy to go,
But I
like,
think if you
yeah.
do say that, like I said, my story, I think people will then go, now I know where Jamie's coming
Okay.
from and
Yeah.
why he's where
Yeah.
he is now. But before you do, just let me read
Yeah.
out some comments because we've had quite a few and I've just
Yeah.
been listening to you and not acknowledging anyone. Look,
Okay.
we've got going years back. Redette did ask me if Dan was my name. Yeah, it's Dan or Daniel. Danetti says acknowledgement. I can't remember what that was about, but I think it's about acknowledgement about what you were talking about. I can't remember because we've gone too far. Rob Keller gives us the praying, and Jennifer says, so true, grow with it. And Alison Holden's here now. Hello, Alison. Beverly Rochester's here. Good morning. She must be in the UK. Alison Holden just joined. Who is this lovely guy? I'm Daniel. Alison? No, it's Jamie from Jamie. See, bring a younger man on and let the ladies love it. This is Jamie. He's the Mind Tradie, and you can listen to his podcast at the _mind _tradie. It's just the Mind Tradie, isn't it? As a
Yeah, just the
podcast.
mind trading for the
But you
podcast.
can
Yeah.
follow him on here at the _mind _tradie. And he has great updates, and he's always out walking and telling you about how to be positive and how to be inspirational. And last week you were up at 4 a.m. on the beach at 2
Yeah.
degrees?
Yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah,
was bloody
crazy.
freezing. It was,
Yeah, I don't know
yeah.
why you were there.
Just because sometimes you got to give a bit of a shock to the system, to the mind, just to make sure your mind's on track sometimes. Well, I do anyway. Not everyone's got to do that, but
No,
people
I
are
think at
little.
my age,
Yeah.
I'd probably have a heart attack.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, yeah, let's go back to so give us some context around your story and then people will understand what you're talking about.
Okay. So, best place for me to start is around the age of four turning 5. My mum remarried someone because my father left prior to me being born, and yeah. Anyway, my mum married someone who became my stepdad, and within about a month or two, as I said, I was 4 years old. Within about a month or two, he turned violent, and that continued for I think they were together for 5 years, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that happened in that time. And I had predominantly taken on that role as protector. I think his two sons that he brought into the relationship weren't doing anything. My brother at the time probably wasn't really old enough to do anything either. I don't know exactly why, me being the youngest, why I chose to do it. It was obviously not a conscious decision, me being that young. I think it was just a decision that almost felt that I had to do. Who's going to protect mum if nobody else is? And ultimately, like from what I know now, it's not just that am I protecting mum. It's like ultimately my safety, I guess, thing in my brain kicked in and said, well, if in order for you to be safe, you need to protect mum. And I guess that's one of the reasons that it was happening. And there was a lot of incidents, a lot of violent incidents, violence against me, violence against my mum, and it was pretty brutal stuff, to be honest, against mum. It was stuff that, I don't necessarily have to go into how bad it was, but it was pretty brutal stuff. I guess, like, without necessarily going into what happened in there, I could say that, that I was in there for 5 years. Mum was married to him for 5 years. And this is not an uncommon thing. So I'm well aware this is not an uncommon thing. But during that time, obviously, like, I really well developed the protector role. And I developed the protector role that nobody else would have known. No, I was just a hyperactive kid in primary school. I was a hyperactive kid in high school as well. But nobody would have known. Nobody would have known that was going on. Now, I remember I'd gone to counsellors and this kind of stuff because a really not great problem that I had during that time was that I couldn't stay at friends' houses. And I couldn't stay at friends' houses because people thought and was telling me that I was this wimp. But really what was going on was that I didn't want to stay away from the house because of what could have happened. And then, and so what would normally happen, I would really try to stay at friends' houses because that's what I wanted to do, because that's just what you did, when I was in grade 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. I would try to stay at friends' houses, and I would say 80% of the time, nearly 90% of the time, it wouldn't happen. It would get to nighttime, generally nighttime. So maybe, depending on what time of the year it was. And I would have to call the house and I would say I'd have to come home. And sometimes the perpetrator of the violence was the one that was actually picking me up, because I didn't know that's necessarily what it was. I just thought I was feeling sick. I was a wimp. Yeah. I was convinced I was a wimp by other people. Yeah. And then, so what I think the major kind of thing happened where I realized, looking back on it, where big issues, I guess, probably were becoming more evident looking back, was when mum and this guy did divorce when I was 9 years old. So they were married for 5 years. And then that's when it really, funnily enough, it really kicked off, of my protective feelings really kicking off. So in between, say, grade 4 and grade 5, so throughout that year between my ages of 9 and 10, as I was saying to you on the podcast the other day, I would on average maybe go to the principal's office or wherever it was, the sick bay, 3 times a week or something like that, or maybe nearly every day for a while. And I would say, I'm just feeling sick, or I'm feeling stressed, I need to speak to mum. And they would call my mum, and because my mum lived across the road, because we moved to a house around from where we were living with this guy, we moved across the road from the school. If my mum was at home, I would walk to the car park in the school, and my mum would come out of the gate. And if she was home, she would just wave to me, and she would see me in the car park and wave to me, and then I was all right for the rest of the day. And then if for some reason she wasn't at home, like she was working 10 minutes around the corner, the school would ring my mum on the work phone or mobile, probably early mobile phones then, and she would drive from work, and she would drive around the school and see me in the car park and just wave to me. And me looking back on that now, I'm like, how did that happen? How did that not get picked up? But these are just questions that I go, how? But I know how. It was, back 20 years ago, whatever. No, longer than 20 years ago. Far out. I can't remember. It's, over 25 years ago or something like that. Yeah, 25 years ago, something like that. Or 20, maybe 20. Because I'm 38, 29 years ago, and I was like 9 years old. So anyway, these kind of things didn't get picked up the same way, and I'm aware of that. But what I guess the questions that I ask aren't necessarily on the school or anything. I'm like, like my mum was putting me in that position. She probably didn't know that well. She didn't know any different. She didn't know the impact that was making. But I was taking on such a protective role as a 9-year-old. I needed to know that my mum was okay during the day, even when she was at work. And I just think what kind of an impact that would have made on me, like not truly living as a child. And as I said, this is not uncommon. This kind of situation not uncommon, or even situations are far worse than what I've just described, not uncommon. But I guess why I think it's so important is to go, what kind of impact did that have on my brain and my thinking in that time? And like, what did I miss out on growing? Like, or did I form, what kind of relationships did I form with people because of this experience? What kind of beliefs did I form around how people will treat me, or, not treat me, or what, well, that kind of stuff. It's led me to think a lot. And that experience is probably one that I go back to and go, yeah, that one's pretty significant. That one's pretty huge. That was happening for so long. But also, the other kind of thing that I'd mention to you as well on the
Well, just
podcast is,
before you do, can I just
okay, yep,
share with you some messages that people have come in, because I think you're really brave. That's why I wanted to talk to you on the podcast. I think, and listening to you now, I'll tell you in a minute about similar experiences I had when I was at school to what you're saying. But
yeah, okay.
Rob says he's up at the 4 a.m. club because he's in America. Redette says that you're so brave to share this, Jamie. And
Thank
she's
you.
so sorry that you went through this. Nikki Hink Fuss says, fuck, that's real. Violence can be emotional too. Redette says again, you put yourself across so well talking about this, Jamie. Well done.
Thank you.
There's loads. I just wanted to give a quick comment to you. So when you were saying about how you felt sick, I had exactly the same experience in England when I was at school. And I think it's because of that teacher and maybe
Yeah,
seeing other kids fighting, because I've never been someone who's had fights ever. And I think, because when you were saying it, you go to the principal's office, say you felt sick. I did the same thing. And my
yeah,
mum would walk down to the school and get me and take me home. As soon as I got home, I was fine. But I
yeah.
think it was hearing these teachers do that thing. I mean, yours is a lot different to what mine is, but I just wanted to let you know that I
Yeah,
feel
but
what you're
it could
feeling,
have
because
just
I had a
been,
similar thing.
it could have just been the anxiety that was built up. And so that anxiety is what ultimately was that feeling. I guess the anxiety can be created by anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what was causing it. But if you had that anxiety and I had that anxiety, it doesn't matter what the causes are. Probably was that you were just getting that it's almost, whether it's nauseous feeling or a stress feeling or whatever it was. And yeah, it was obviously happening to me for some reason, because like I don't feel like that now. Like even when I get anxious, I don't get that feeling anymore. But I obviously was as a child.
And look, when
Mm.
you said about your mum, you either having to stand at the gate and wave across the road, or she would drive around and you would see her and then you'd be okay. When I actually listened to your podcast on that episode about that, I actually cried because I just felt for you so much that that's what you'd gone through, and that you needed to see her so that you could feel okay and know that everything was all right. I mean,
Yeah,
do you remember what that podcast number is in the Mind
yeah.
Tradie?
It's number 10. My story is number 10.
Is that in season 2?
It's season 1. So season 1, number 10.
Season 1, episode 10. Listen to Jamie talk about his life. He does it all on his own, which to me is a bravo moment, because when I try and do a podcast on my own, at 10 minutes, I'm over it and I just want to finish. But when you talked about it and explained your whole life, anyone who's listening now needs to go and listen to that episode, because it is just phenomenal. And you'll have so many different emotions listening to Jamie and how he stands up for his mum. And I don't want to tell you anymore because we want to talk now, but it's an amazing story, and it was absolutely brilliant the way you put it across. It was amazing, mate.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, really, that's good to know, because yeah, it was early on in my podcast too when I was making it.
Oh, look, it was an absolute gem. I mean, your other ones are good too, but that one, you talking on your own, was it was an absolute winner, because you just explained everything about your childhood, about your eyesight and all of that. And it was just like, wow, how can this man have gone through all that and now be out there helping other people and be so inspiring to others with what you do? You've got to have a real pat on the back for that one, mate, because that was a corker.
Thank you so
Corker, I
much.
don't speak like that, but no, it was an absolute gem.
Okay, thanks, yeah, much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess so. That was kind of the main kind of things that were happening, or the main kind of events that were happening. But I guess it was the other kind of knock-on effects. So I think from about the age of 5, I started wetting the bed up until the age of 14.
Yeah.
That's not normal. Like wetting the bed is normal for people in that environment, but not up until that age. It does happen, but up until
Yeah.
like I was early year 9 in 14, and so I was year 9 in high school, or else I should have been trying to chase girls and that kind of stuff. But all have I kind of went I was pretty I was pretty inward back then. Like I guess I tried to be like a funny guy or that kind of stuff, but yeah, no, having kind of inner confidence in someone who wets the bed is not a thing that's they don't, or they correlate negatively. They don't, not confidence and wetting the bed are two things that don't go well together. But it's just
No,
it
but
was
look,
part of the experience,
I
you
imagine
know.
that you were being funny in that and entertaining people because inside you're absolutely broken. So on the outside, you're wearing that
Yeah.
mask of everything's all right.
Well, yeah, and as I was saying before, how I couldn't stay at friends' houses. The thing is, if I got to a point where, say, it got to 12 o'clock at night and I was going to stay, I wasn't getting that sick feeling to go home. I was petrified that I was going to wet the bed at night and I would get
Yeah.
found out and people would tease me.
Yeah.
So it's like, as I said, these are things looking back. I wasn't aware that these things were abnormal at the time, but looking back, I'm like, uh, me having, I guess, identity issues as an adult, say low self-esteem for a while back. One of the main reasons why I started to go back to, or why I started to go to therapy even, was, I could just tell I didn't think a whole lot about myself compared to other people. Well, that's what I thought anyway. I guess it probably turns out that it was just in certain areas of my life I didn't think a whole lot about myself. But like I'm fortunate that I could tell that there was a difference. There was like I want to feel confident like that person does, or at least want to be perceived as confident, as in like I want to at least look confident. Like give me something. Like I wasn't confident at all, and so I just wanted to be able to be. Actually, you know what? The main thing is I wanted to be around people and not be so anxious.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted because what I had developed was I was really anxious, like prior to me. Oh, really anxious even up until now. I can get anxious now. I've just got much. I'm still anxious, just as bad, nearly just as bad. Oh no, I've got the capacity to be as anxious, but
Yeah.
I've got much better control. So
Yeah.
if I didn't do the things I do now, eat well, exercise, meditate, and all the stuff that I know now, I would still be just the way I was. So my capacity to be anxious hasn't changed. I've just got better strategies for dealing with it. But I guess going through of my teenage years when I was incredibly anxious, one of the major things that really helped me at that time was going into martial arts, and then martial arts helped me have a good avenue to let certain things out because like and a lot of other men, we kind of our anxiety manifests through anger, and
Yes.
but our anger doesn't mean we're actually doing anything about the cause of anxiety. It just means we're letting it out. So at least I had that. I was able to have, so I wasn't internalizing it so much. I was at least able to let it out for a while, and then that's how I got into kickboxing and fighting in the ring and all that kind of stuff. But I think it wasn't until maybe recently I've been able to really kind of understand the reason for anxiety and the reason for my anxiety going back, I guess connecting everything together was that I had a pretty significant fear of like rejection in some way. It wasn't not even so much a fear of rejection. It was I had a belief of rejection. And once again, going back to schema therapy, that would come under one of those kind of maladaptive schemas that I had. My way of managing or putting information about the world together and what happened. I kind of just went, oh, I'm there's something wrong with me. I'm defective. So people
Yeah.
one day, if they like me now, well, they'll find out something later. This is just, how the child brain, I guess, to help me formulate this is, we because we need to put information together and everybody will do it differently. And I just kind of did it that way. And I just kind of just had this belief. As I said, I didn't have a fear. I had a belief of rejection.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like me meeting my wife when I was like 28 that I was able to kind of really kind of begin to challenge that. And that was incredibly tough. But the first few months of when I started to really develop feelings for it, it was crazy tough because of all the stuff that had happened earlier on. And
Yeah.
I'm probably going off track because I'm talking more about more present day stuff. But it was like the effect of that childhood stuff and how that kind of molded my brain into thinking certain ways, certain things, or
Yeah.
molded my belief systems and whatnot. That's why I think it's important to be able to tie it all together to give some context to it.
And look, no, you're right, because what you're talking about now is stuff that affected you when you were younger.
Yeah.
I just want to put it out there to people. If you want to ask a question, you can do it in the little box down on the right-hand side, which has got a little speech bubble with a question mark in it, or you can just put it in the comments here. If you have anything you want to ask Jamie, because, you know, Jamie's here tonight. He won't be here next week. I'll be here next week, but you might want to ask Jamie something. I know someone said you had nice tats and something else. Nice tats and nice hat, maybe. But it was definitely, they said they liked your tats. So
Oh,
if
that's
anyone
good.
wants to ask
Thank you.
Jamie anything about what he's just spoken about, or anything to do with psychology, or things that he or I can help you with, send us a question or comment, and we'll ask you. And Redette says, you're so lucky you found your wife. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, you see that this is another thing. What I really love. So like, and it gets talked about in attachment theory, and even schema therapy goes over it. So like the things that happen to us earlier on, but predominantly with our primary caregivers, we will I guess unconsciously search for the relationships that we feel that we deserve. Friendships, workplace relationships, partnerships, marriages, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. How we were treated by our primary caregivers is generally how the kind of relationships we think we deserve later on, or what we think is normal later on. And that's probably why I didn't really have like my wife, was my first real relationship at 28. Like, I mean, I had, girls that would like not very long relationships, you know what I mean? But that's why, because I wouldn't know how to handle that, so I'm not going to have a relationship. Maybe I tried, but the thing is, we will get into positions where we will try. It's believed that we will try to heal certain wounds by having certain relationships. But people that are ready to heal the wound, like I obviously was, my wife came into my life, or I was searching for someone like her, and then I was able to begin to heal that wound. Now, I won't say that I'm forever, that I'm healed, because I actually think that's a real misconception. People say a lot online, they'll say, I'm healed, I'm healed. To be honest, I think I've had this thing that was cut open early on, and maybe I'm just getting better at dealing with it. Maybe there is healing. I don't know, but I think it's probably a bit of a misconception to say I'm healed, especially if you've only been dealing with it for a year or two. I think it can take a long time. But yeah, going back to what I was saying is we will search for relationships, either what we think we deserve, or potentially when we're ready, we will look for relationships that will help us challenge those attachment styles that we had, or beliefs that we had about the relationships we deserve, and all that kind of stuff. So my wife helped me challenge that. So maybe it's important for people to understand. So like, if someone's in a relationship they think maybe isn't serving them that well for some reason, maybe that, it could even be, as I said, it could even be a workplace thing. People are at work are not treating you very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it could be anywhere. But so how were you treated, say, early on? What were you given, like, great attention? Were you given attention that didn't treat you that well? And maybe this relationship at work, or in the home, or whatever it is, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whatever it is this relationship just mimicking the one you had when you were younger? And maybe, to be honest, if you don't really know, that's why it's important to probably go to a psychologist or go to a counselor to help explore that. But we attract certain things for a reason, and we'll be in certain situations for a reason. So are you attracting a certain person because that's what you think you deserve, even though that's not very good for you? Or are you attracting a person because they're going to help you, or are you looking for a certain person because they're going to help you heal that wound? And so I guess, essentially they're good for you. I find this stuff so fascinating.
I find it fascinating listening to you talk, because you bring up all these things that I've learned and I'd forgotten about. And actually, as you're talking, I'm thinking, wow, yeah, that's actually really good. We've got a couple of comments here. So we've got from The Mike G. Simon, integration of the parts of yourself is part of the healing process. And Alison Holden, so were you in a better place to be able to attract your wife? And then we've
I
got
think,
another.
yeah.
Yeah, we've got another question here. Oh, not well, it is a question, but I think it's a comment from Deborah saying, "Thank you for sharing your thoughts and feelings. It's such a shame that other men can't do this freely." So there are, Jamie, you're causing a bit of an Instagram to be empathetic and to understand how you're talking. And your story is important, and that's why it's good to have you on here, because people are empathizing with you and understanding you. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And that's what will make you such a good psychologist, because you're not only learning all the psychology, you've actually been through a lot of shit that you've worked through and got to a better place. So you understand how to unravel all that mess.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping where I lack academic academic ability, that will hopefully make up for it, which I think it is, which is good.
Look, you don't lack academic ability, because you can bring out all these things. And like, you know, when you were talking about attachment therapy, I first started thinking, what the fuck is attachment therapy? I've got to remember what it is. But you just explained it really well, you know, and
yeah.
you know,
Well,
these things are important to bring forward.
I think it's really important for, like, particularly, I think there's different attachment styles that people might have experienced, and you know, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to learn. Like, there's so many podcasts and books and all that. It's actually become quite a lot, and more now, which is great. But just, there was a question there that I actually really liked, just to bring attention to. Someone said, was I ready when my wife came on? And I think that the thing is that's exactly what happened. So I had got myself, I wasn't healed, and that's why she came along. I got myself in a position where I was ready to challenge certain beliefs. And my beliefs that I needed to challenge my wife to do around relationships. Everything else I'm pretty good with. Well, you know, to an extent. But the one I really needed to challenge was with my wife. And so I'm not sure if I spoke about this on your podcast or not, but when I stopped working, when my vision impairment kicked in when I was 26, so just for people unaware, so like I lost 90% of my vision when I was 26 years old, and I was like unemployed for like two years prior to starting studying and all that kind of stuff. There was like a 2-year period where I realized how I was going to handle having a vision impairment. Or like intuitively, the thoughts were coming in saying, you need to improve the relationship with yourself. And so what I did was, like, when I wasn't working, I would go for walks sometimes once or twice a day. And on that walk, I would say things to myself, because it was the only way I thought I could improve my relationship, was like, I would say, I'm good, I'm deserving, I'm this, you know, you're worthy, all that kind of stuff. Because I'm like, well, what else am I going to do with my time? I'll go for a walk for 90 minutes. I'll tell myself that stuff the whole time. Now, it might have made like a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of difference compared to, say, going to therapy or reading book or whatever it is. But it was like, it wasn't so much like literally what I was doing. It was the fact that I was putting myself in a position where I was ready, and by doing that, I was putting myself in a position where I was like, okay, I understand, I need to change something, and that's what I was doing. So that's what I was trying to do. And then I guess after a little while, 18 months, 12 months, whatever it was, you know, my wife came along, and that's kind of how it came. But then when she came along, and like I started to develop feelings for her, like I started to develop feelings of love. That's when I started freaking out. And that's when major feelings of anxiety came in. And that's where you've got to go, okay, what is triggering this? And I probably didn't know back in the day what it was, but I knew I knew I was getting scary feelings, but I knew, like, I loved her. After a few months, we talked about kids in like the first few weeks. It was just one of those relationships. And, you know, like, if I had just treated it like every other relationship I'd had prior to that, I would have just broken up with her and gone and done something else. Or I would have done something deliberately and got her to break up with me. Sabotage. Yeah. And so, yeah, you need to be ready. But the thing is, when you are ready, the things will come sometimes. It's not like you've got to go, okay, I'm ready. It's like, it just kind of happens. As like, I'm not talking about airy fairy like kind of stuff, but there's like certain things unseen in the universe that when we're ready, they'll come to us.
Well, look, you know, I met my wife when I was 30, I don't even know, 36, 37. I fell in love pretty quick. We dated for a year, then we got married. But for me, it didn't work out quite as well as for you. But that's okay. It was an experience. I learned a lot from it. I learned what I want in a relationship and what I don't want in a relationship.
Yeah.
And that was important because before that, like you say, I was in a lot of relationships where that were like six months to a year, and then I'd move on and find someone else. And
Mm.
yeah, so look, I mean, it was 5 years all up, and that was good. But
Yeah.
for me now, I'm a single bloke who enjoys his own company and
Living the dream.
spend, spending too much time doing podcasts and talking to people.
Well, I guess
I've just
one
got a
thing I wanted to
question for
mention.
you.
Oh, yeah, okay,
Go on.
so yep.
No, no, go on.
I was going to say that, like, where I've got to with that is even an understanding that if for some reason something happened between my wife and I, for some reason we just grew apart or something, which happens, the number one thing that we share is our daughter. No matter what happens in that relationship, our daughter is our number one priority, which is what has, even my early childhood stuff helped me realize that. So, I wouldn't
Yeah.
go, we wouldn't break up and go, oh, how am I going to find someone? But no, I'll be right. It should be like, no, I'll be okay too. It might be tough. But the number one thing is, how is our daughter? How is she? How do we maintain showing love and doing stuff with her? Like that's the number one thing. The fact that whether parents are still together or not, that doesn't really matter. How is the child? Well, not that it doesn't matter. It's important. But if something happens, what can you do? What
Look,
happens after that?
we know where you're coming from, Jamie,
Yeah.
because we can see it in your face that you're speaking authentically. I've got some comments. So from Alison, she says, "Thank you for explaining about your wife. And yes, good things are scary and bring anxiety, don't they?" Rob said, "Same with the hand." What do hands in the air like that mean? Sorry, what do hands up in the air mean, guys? Because I don't know. I just see them up there, and I have no
I
idea
think
what they
it's
are.
like, I think it's like agreeing. I think
Okay.
I think that somewhere along those lines.
And then we've got a question from the Mike G. Simon. Where are your thoughts regarding the body as well as the mind from a psychology perspective? Well, look at Jamie. You can see he is a fit person and looks after his body and psychology. So I would imagine for him, it's mind and body altogether. Am
Yeah,
I
I
right?
mean, like I think they both bounce off each other. So that's why the way that I manage anxiety, or when I realize there's a decline in anxiety, well, no, an increase in anxiety, is when like I haven't meditated enough for many days in a row. I've let too many days go by and not meditating, or I haven't eaten well. Well, I can't say like the last 12 months I've eaten incredibly well and will continue to do that now. But prior to that, when I wasn't sleeping well, when I wasn't exercising well, when I wasn't eating well, these are the things that will really trigger my anxiety as well, or at least make it harder to handle. So there's so many things that we can do physically that can help us have a much better control. And how you're thinking is going to affect your body, and how you're treating your body is obviously going to affect your thinking. And also just I guess I can connect on that is, so when we lessen our anxiety, however we do this, everybody's different. When we relax, whether it's meditation or sleeping at the right time and getting up, whatever it is, drinking enough water, all those basic little things. When you can lessen your anxiety, lessen your stress response, and you can start using that front part of your brain, well, that's where rational thinking and problem solving is, in the front part of your brain. But when you're in an anxious state, you're not necessarily using your front part of your brain. You're going to be in that stress response state. So that's why I'm just going back to that, where the body and mind are connected. So what you're doing for your body, controlling your anxiety how you can, is that ultimately going to be doing good things for your mind as well.
Well, look, Jamie and Rob, who's on here, you've both convinced me that I need to do a bit more exercise, because I couldn't actually answer that question, because I know my mind works okay, but my body doesn't work as good as my mind. And it's a
Yeah,
little bit of fibro, and it's a little bit of having so much
yeah,
to do that by the time I get home, I just need to sleep on the couch. But I
yeah,
do need to do a bit more exercise and be a bit fitter.
yeah. But you might be pretty good. You might be, as in, like, I'm okay. What I'm doing is fine. But I guess it's when people start going, my mental health's not great. And so sometimes when people's mental health's not great, it doesn't actually mean there's something going in the mind. There might be something that can actually start beginning to really make significant changes to their mental health by things that they do physically.
Yeah.
Mm.
Does anyone else have a comment or a question before we wrap up for the Mind Tradie? So remember, the Mind Tradie is on Spotify, and you're on Apple as well, aren't you?
Yep.
The
Yep.
Mind Tradie is on Spotify and Apple. This is Jamie Usher. You should go and listen to his. How many podcasts have you done now? About 30.
There's like 32 there. Yeah, 32.
32, so I'm not that far out then.
You've like I can't help but respect what you've done so far.
I think
How
I've
many
actually,
episodes you've got?
I've got 164.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I've listened to, I think about 11 of yours now.
Okay.
So 11
Thank you.
podcasts out of 32. That's not too bad, is it?
No, look, that's actually pretty good. I've listened to four out of yours, 150 odd, so the percentage is a bit different. But yeah, and all of yours have been fantastic as well. I love yours. Yours are all yours are so good. I love yours.
What I don't know. You shared the Nexium one, didn't you? No, you shared the Child
Yeah.
Predators one. Oh,
Oh, I
Nexium.
did actually. Yeah,
But look,
I'll
the
share the
Nexium
next
one
one too.
on Spotify is just, I'm getting like 4 or 5 listens a day now. So something's
Yeah.
happened and people are going back and listening. And that's what I find. The week I put the podcast out, loads of
Yeah.
people listen. But then it's the weeks after that
Yeah.
boost the numbers up when people go, oh, I found this one. Anyone
Yeah.
listening here in Australia who remembers not Dave Gray, Dave Graham from Big Brother series 2022 and 2006. I interviewed him over the weekend and that was up on Sunday. I'm also going to be interviewing Reggie from Big Brother, who just won Big Brother last night. She's coming on in 3 weeks. And I also got contacted by Tim, who was on Big Brother, and he's got the #1 podcast in the country and he wants to come on and have a chat. So I'm pretty
Wow.
impressed with that.
Yeah.
And Jamie, your podcast on my podcast, your interview with me on my podcast is in about 3 weeks. So this week
Cool.
I've got a guy from America who was a MMA fighter, and he
Yeah.
got some damage to his brain, and he talks about the issues that affect young guys playing football and all sports, and he's trying to highlight the fact that they can get some injuries to their brain. And so he goes to schools and that in America to try and help kids understand what they need to do. The week after that, I've got Chad Nelson on. I don't know if he's still on here listening, but Chad and I always have a great chat. And then the week after that is you. So 3 weeks' time, you'll be listening to
Cool.
Jamie, the Mind Tradie. But I urge you to go and listen to some of his podcasts. Join his page on here, Instagram, which is _mind_tradie. Look, you'll just find his stuff amazing because, yeah, I do. It's really good.
Thanks, heaps, Dan. I really appreciate that.
That's all right. Our nutritional counsellor, Laura, says,
Yeah.
yay, Big Brother fan right here. So go to Life Changes You on where am I? On Spotify and Apple and everywhere else. And have a listen to Dave's one from last week. And there's some ones on cults on there. There's a bit of something for everybody on there. Rob has just said that he's following you now, Mind Tradie. So you've got to tell me how many new follows you get. I reckon you should get at least 10 from tonight. And if you don't, I'll be talking to my followers and asking them why. Oh, look, nutritional counsellor saying, loving your podcast, Mind Tradie. There you go.
Oh yeah. Look, Laura mentioned that she was listening to certain episodes. So thanks for listening, Laura. For that.
Yeah. So follow the Mind Tradie, follow me, Life Changes You podcast __ in there somewhere. And thank you, Jamie, for coming on tonight. It was brilliant. I love talking to you. I love your passion. I love your inspiration. I love that you're so open about your stories, about what's happened to you, because as someone else there said earlier, not many men talk about what's happened to them. And I think the way you talk about it and describe it and let people into what happened to you in your life, it's just incredible, mate. And my hat off to you, even though I'm not wearing a hat. But I don't know if you can see, Jamie, but I've had my hair bleached. And,
no, I can't. I saw it in a photo the other day. I can't see it here, but I saw it.
Yeah, no. And
suits you well, man.
Like earlier today, I thought, oh God, have I just had a midlife crisis at 50? But then I thought, look, fuck it. I'm 50. I don't care. I just want to be happy. So
yeah, exactly. Do what you want to do.
Not that I'm not happy usually, Jamie. I'm usually always happy.
Yeah.
I am always happy, and not usually, always. All right, Jamie, thank you so much for coming on. Those people start following you. I'm going to put this up as a video that other people could watch. Do you want me to collaborate you in it? So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool, Jamie, we'll catch up again soon. So glad you could join me. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's a real honour to be on your podcast and on your live stuff as well, because you've had so many people that I've liked in the past. So to be able to be one of those people that have come on, it's a bit of an honour. So thanks so much.
Well, look, to me, the honour is mine that you came on.
Thank you.
All right, enough of this love fest. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you missed any of it, you can go and watch it on the catch-up. And please go and follow Jamie. And if you listen to his podcast, number 10, Series 1, let me know what you think of it. Let Jamie know what you think of it, because it really touched me. It was brilliant. Okay,
that'd be
thank
great.
you.
All right. See you
Have
later,
a good
mate.
night,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.